A good call. Because some of the rest of it, like some of these are dark and bleak. I was like, that doesn't seem like a birthday poem.
Don't let Frankie start.
Sorry?
I think that was Katie just leaving the room, realising that she'd gone to put the kettle on and forgotten to put the kettle on, and saying, "Don't let Frankie start."
As if I would.
Anyone else just like this on the weekend now that the restrictions are lifting a little?
What's that, darling?
Oh, you lot with your lifting restrictions.
Some of the restrictions are lifting, so I want to know if anyone did anything new and cool.
They haven't lifted that much here.
Okay.
We have shops open. We can go to Primark on our own.
Yay!
Which is obviously what we've all been missing during lockdown. I've really been every day sat at home going, oh, I just wish I could go to Primark.
So are they having discounts in Primark?
Yeah, lockdown lifted enough that I, on Saturday, indulged myself in imagining touching another human. Because that's been, I think that was forbidden for a while, but we're back in like, that's about the extent of the lifting, I'm afraid.
Ooh. Is there something on your head, Alba, or just behind your head?
Oh, my internet is shit. My internet is so shit.
So she's just become an angel and has a halo now.
Does anyone have a poem for Kim handy? Or I have a nice one that's called Balance. Do you have a poem, Nick?
That sounds lovely.
Waving?
Oh, I was waving at Lisa.
Oh, I'd love to hear your poem.
So it's from this book. I thank the universe for taking everything it has taken and giving to me everything it is giving.
That's lush.
Yeah. They're just really lovely. Like I might send you this book. It's already borrowed from Portland, so at some point it has to go back to Portland, but I feel like it should just be sent around lovely people. And kind of
that does sound so nice.
I mean, that's the best thing to do with good books, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah. Pass them on.
Happy birthday, Kim.
Thank you.
He's frozen.
Man.
Are you freezing people with your Magnum ice cream?
Is everyone eating ice cream? Was there like a memo that went round that I didn't get?
No, you forgot to eat ice cream.
We don't have ice cream.
It can still happen.
I just ate ice cream, but I don't have any left.
Oh.
I have some in the
tummy.
freezer.
Does that mean do I have to go? Do I have to leave if I don't have ice cream?
No.
No.
Rory and I
No, someone should solve this for you.
Rory and I are indulging in something that we have terribly named brown Russians. It's white Russians, but with chocolate milk.
Oh God, that sounds unbelievably good.
Great idea.
It really does.
Why would you call it something so horrific?
Because we are awful. If you can't think of a better name, then go for it.
Brown Scotsman.
What's
It's delight.
What's brown and Russian?
I think you just have to take the word brown out of it.
Russian bear?
Oh, Russian bear is nice.
Yeah.
It's the only brown Russian thing I can think of.
Just milk of the bear.
Oh, I hate it. I love it. That's the name. That's the name.
Bear milk sounds like the worst protein supplement.
Bear milk.
Milk of the bear.
It's definitely got some intensely homoerotic marketing.
And
it's definitely marketed to gay bodybuilders.
Yeah.
Bear milk.
Chocolate white Russian? No, not an option. You know, like call it by the name, no best.
Did you know that you can buy the world's most expensive bottled water in Claridge's, and it's called Cloud Juice?
Fuck off.
Sounds like it's for wankers.
Some marketing person was so proud of themselves when they came up with that idea, and they probably earned a silly amount of money.
It's like £5 squillion a bottle.
I think it should be called Tears of the Cloud.
Yeah, see, that's much Cloud Juice. Cloud
You lots of money for that.
idea. Cloud Juice.
Cloud Juice.
Well, we can make Tears of the Cloud happen and sell it even more expensive.
And a little bit
Growth
salty.
community worldwide.
You've really cracked this capitalism log, haven't you?
I'm trying.
In order to speak about it must have been freshly squeezed, which sounds like the worst job. They just chuck you out of a plane with a big pouch and like, all right, off you go. Good luck. We'll catch it on the way down.
It's 12 minutes past. Just a time
Better than
check.
squeezing a bear.
Is
Katie,
Katie
what's
back?
time?
Katie's back.
Story time.
Story time.
Okay, we're looking at story time. See you later.
Right, you rowdy lot. Okay. Right, what am I doing? I feel a little bit at 6s and 7s. Seeing Janelle and Michael in the same place has completely thrown me. It's completely thrown me. I miss people. Okay, right. Wizardry. Okay.
And ice cream.
Boats.
Neat. Right. I'm in the zone. Now, where had we left it? Where had we left it? Oh, yes, I remember. So I'll go back over the last few lines that we had. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. What is this jewel that gives your keep its name? He asked her as they sat talking over their emptied gold plates and gold goblins in the goblets in the cavernous candlelit dining hall. You have not heard of it? It is a famous thing. No, I only know that the lords of Osgil have famous treasuries. Ah, this jewel outshines them all. Come, would you like to see it? She smiled with a look of mockery and daring, as if a little afraid of what she did, and led the young man from the hall out through the narrow corridors of the base of the tower and downstairs underground to a locked door he had not seen before. This she unlocked with a silver key, looking up at Ged with that same smile as she did so, as if she dared him to come on with her. Beyond the door was a short passage and a second door, which she unlocked with a gold key, and beyond that again a third door, which she unlocked with one of the great words of unbinding. Within that last door, her candle showed them a small room like a dungeon cell. Floor, walls, ceiling, all rough stone, unfurnished, blank. Do you see it? Serad asked. As Ged looked round the room, his wizard's eye caught one stone of those that made the floor. It was rough and dank as the rest, a heavy, unshapen paving stone. Yet he felt the power of it as if it spoke to him aloud. And his breath caught in his throat, and a sickness came over him for a moment. This was the founding stone of the tower. This was the central place, and it was cold, bitter cold. Nothing could ever warm the little room. This was a very ancient thing. An old and terrible spirit was prisoned in that block of stone. He did not answer Seret yes or no, but stood still, and presently, with a quick, curious glance at him, she pointed out the stone. That is the Terranod. Do you wonder that we keep so precious a jewel locked away in our deepest hoard room? Still Ged did not answer, but stood dumb and wary. She might almost have been testing him, but he thought she had no notion of the stone's nature to speak of it so lightly. She did not know enough of it to fear it. Tell me of its powers, he said at last. It was made before Sigor raised the islands of the world from the open sea. It was made when the world itself was made, and will endure until the end of the world. Time is nothing to it. If you lay your hand upon it and ask a question of it, it will answer according to the power that is in you. It has a voice if you know how to listen. It will speak of things that were and are and will be. It told of your coming long before you came to this land. Will you ask a question of it now? No. It will answer you. There is no question I would ask it. It might tell you, Seret said in her soft voice, how you will defeat your enemy. Ged stood mute. Do you fear the stone? She asked, as if unbelieving, and he answered, yes. In the deadly cold and silence of the room, encircled by wall after wall of spellwork and of stone, in the light of the one candle she held, Seret glanced at him again with gleaming eyes. Sparrowhawk, she said, you are not afraid. But I will not speak with that spirit, Ged replied, and looking full at her, spoke with a grave boldness. My lady, that spirit is sealed in a stone, and the stone is locked by binding spell and blinding spell, and charm of lock and ward and triple fortress walls in a barren land, not because it is precious, but because it can work great evil. I do not know what they told you of it when you came here, but you who are young and gentle-hearted should never touch the thing or even look on it. It will not work you well. I have touched it. I have spoken to it and heard it speak. It does me no harm. She turned away, and they went out through the doors and passages till in the torchlight of the broad stairs of the tower she blew out her candle. They parted with few words. That night Ged slept little. It was not the thought of the shadow that kept him awake. Rather, that thought was almost driven from his mind by the image, ever returning, of the stone on which this tower was founded, and by the vision of Seret's face, bright and shadowy in the candlelight, turned to him. Again and again he felt her eyes on him, and tried to decide what look had come into those eyes when he refused to touch the stone, whether it had been disdain or hurt. When he lay down to sleep at last, the silken sheets of the bed were cold as ice, and ever he wakened in the dark, thinking of the stone and of Seret's eyes. Next day he found her in the curving hall of grey marble, lit now by the westering sun, where often she spent the afternoon at games or at the weaving loom with her maids. He said to her, Lady Seret, I affronted you. I am sorry for it. No, she said musingly, and again, no. She sent away the serving women who were with her, and when they were alone, she turned to Ged. My guest, my friend, she said, you are very clear-sighted, but perhaps you do not see all that is to be seen. In Gaunt, in Rogue, they teach high wizardries, but they do not teach all wizardries. This is Oskill, Ravenland. It is not a Hardic land. Mages do not rule it, nor do they know much of it. There are happenings here not dealt with by the lawmasters of the south, and things here not named in the namers' lists. What one does not know, one fears. But you have nothing to fear here in the court of the Terranon. A weaker man would, indeed. Not you. You are one born with the power to control that which is in the sealed room. This I know. It is why you are here now. I do not understand. That is because my lord Benderezek has not been wholly frank with you. I will be frank. Come, sit by me. He sat down beside her on the deep cushioned window ledge. The dying sunlight came level through the window, flooding them with a radiance in which there was no warmth. On the moorlands below, already sinking into shadow, last night's snow lay unmelted, a dull white pall over the earth. She spoke now, very softly. Benderezek is lord and inheritor of the Terranon, but he cannot use the thing. He cannot make it wholly serve his will. Nor can I, alone or with him. Neither he nor I has the skill and power. You have both. How do you know that? From the stone itself. I told you that it spoke of your coming. It knows its master. It has waited for you to come. Before ever you were born, it waited for you, for the one who could master it. And he who can make the Terranon answer what he asks and do what he wills has power over his own destiny. Strength to crush any enemy, mortal or of the other world. Foresight, knowledge, wealth, dominion, and a wizardry at his command that could humble the Archmage himself. As much as that, as little of that as you choose is yours for the asking. Once more she lifted her strange bright eyes to him, and her gaze pierced him so that he trembled as if with cold. Yet there was fear in her face, as if she sought his help but was too proud to ask it. Ged was bewildered. She had put her hand on his as she spoke. Its touch was light. It looked narrow and fair on his dark, strong hand. He said, pleading, "Seret, I have no such power as you think. What I had once I threw away. I cannot help you. I am no use to you. But I know this, the old powers of earth are not for men to use. They were never given into our hands, and in our hands they work only ruin. Ill means ill end. I was not drawn here, but driven here, and the force that drove me works to my undoing. I cannot help you. He who throws away his power is filled sometimes with a far greater power," she said, smiling, as if his fears and scruples were childish ones. "I may know more than you of what brought you here. Did not a man speak to you in the streets of Oromie? He was a messenger, a servant of the Terranon. He was a wizard once himself, but he threw away his staff to serve a power greater than any mage's. And you came to Oskill, and on the moors you tried to fight a shadow with your wooden staff, and almost we could not save you, for that thing that follows you is more cunning than we deemed, and had taken much strength from you already. Only shadow can fight shadow. Only darkness can defeat the dark. Listen, Sparrowhawk. What do you need, then, to defeat that shadow which waits for you outside these walls?" "I need what I cannot know. Its name." "The Terranon, that knows all births and deaths, and beings before and after death. the unborn and the undying, the bright world and the dark one will tell you that name. And the price? There is no price. I tell you, it will obey you, serve you as your slave. Shaken and tormented, he did not answer. She held his hand now in both of hers, looking into his face. The sun had fallen into the mists that dulled the horizon, and the air too had grown dull, but her face grew bright with praise and triumph as she watched him and saw his will shaken within him. Softly she whispered, "You will be mightier than all men and king amongst men. You will rule, and I will rule with you." Suddenly Ged stood up, and one step forward took him where he could see, just around the curve of the long room's wall, beside the door, the Lord of the Terranon, who stood listening and smiling a little. Ged's eyes cleared, and his mind. He looked down at Seret. "It is light that defeats the dark," he said, stammering. "Light." As he spoke, he saw, as plainly as if his own words were the light that showed him, how indeed he had been drawn here, lured here, how they had used his fear to lead him on, and how they would, once they had him, have kept him. They had saved him from the shadow, indeed, for they did not want him to be possessed by the shadow until he had become a slave of the stone. Once his will was captured by the power of the stone, then they would let the shadow into the walls, for a Gebeth was a better slave even than a man. If he had once touched the stone or spoken to it, he would have been utterly lost. Yet, even as the shadow had not quite been able to catch up with him and seize him, so the stone had not been able to use him. Not quite. He had almost yielded, but not quite. He had not consented. It is very hard for evil to take hold of the unconsenting soul. He stood between the two who had yielded, who had consented, looking from one to the other as Benderezek came forward. "I told you," the Lord of the Terranon said, dry-voiced to his lady, "that he would slip from your hands, Seret. They are clever fools, your Gontish sorcerers. And you are a fool too, woman of Gont, thinking to trick both him and me, and rule us both by your beauty, and use the Terranon to your own ends. But I am the Lord of the Stone, and this I do to the disloyal wife. E cavroi ai oloevanto." It was a spell of changing, and Benderezek's long hands were raised to shape the cowering woman into some hideous thing, swine or dog or drivelling hag. Ged stepped forward and struck the Lord's hands down with his own, saying as he did so only one short word. And though he had no staff, and stood on alien ground and evil ground, the domain of a dark power, yet his will prevailed. Benderezek stood still, his clouded eyes fixed, hateful and unseeing, upon Seret. "Come," she said in a shaking voice. "Sparrowhawk, come, quick, before he can summon the servants of the stone." As if in echo, a whispering ran through the tower, through the stones of the floor and walls, a dry, trembling murmur, as if the earth itself should speak. Seizing Ged's hand, Seret ran with him through the passages and halls, down the long, twisted stairs. They came out into the courtyard, where a last silvery daylight still hung above the soiled, trodden snow. 3 of the castle servants barred their way, sullen and questioning, as if they had been suspecting some plot of these 2 against their master. "It grows dark, lady," one said, and another, "You cannot ride out now." "Out of my way, filth!" Seret cried, and spoke in the sibilant Oscillian speech. The men fell back from her and crouched down to the ground, writhing, and one of them screamed aloud. "We must go out by the gate. There is no other way out. Can you see it? Can you find it, Sparrowhawk?" She tugged at his hand, yet he hesitated. "What spell did you set on them?" "I ran hot lead in the marrow of their bones. They will die of it. Quick, I tell you, he will loose the servants of the stone, and I cannot find the gate. There is a great charm on it. Quick!" Ged did not know what she meant, for to him the enchanted gate was as plain to see as the stone archway of the court through which he saw it. He led Seret through the wand, across the untrodden snow of the forecourt, and then, speaking a word of opening, he led her through the gate of the wall of spells. She changed as they passed through that doorway, out of the silvery twilight of the court of the Terranon. She was not less beautiful in the drear light of the moors, but there was a fierce witch look to her beauty, and Ged knew her at last. The daughter of the Lord of Ray Albi, daughter of a sorceress of Oscail, who had mocked him in the green meadows above Ogion's house long ago, and had sent him to read that spell which loosed the shadow. But he spent small thought on this, for he was looking about him now with every sense alert, looking for that enemy, the shadow, which would be waiting for him somewhere outside the magic walls. It might be Gebeth still, clothed in Skior's death, or it might be hidden in the gathering darkness, waiting to seize him and merge its shapelessness with his living flesh. He sensed its nearness, yet he did not see it. But as he looked, he saw some small, dark thing half buried in snow, a few paces from the gate. He stooped, and then softly picked it up in his two hands. It was the otak, its fine, short fur all clogged with blood, and its small body light and stiff and cold in his hands. "Change yourself! Change yourself! They are coming!" Seret shrieked, seizing his arm and pointing to the tower that stood behind them like a tall white tooth in the dusk. From slit windows near its base, dark creatures were creeping forth, flapping long wings, slowly beating and circling up over the walls towards Ged and Seret, where they stood on the hillside, unprotected. The rattling whisper they had heard inside the keep had grown louder, a tremor and moaning in the earth under their feet. Anger welled up in Ged's heart, a hot rage of hate against all the cruel, deathly things that tricked him, trapped him, hunted him down. "Change yourself!" Seret screamed at him, and she, with a quick gasped spell, shrank into a grey gull and flew. But Ged stooped and plucked a blade of wild grass that poked up dry and frail out of the snow where the otak had lain dead. This blade he held up, and as he spoke aloud to it in the true speech, it lengthened and thickened, and when he was done, he held a great staff, a wizard's staff, in his hand. No bane fire burned red along it when the black, flapping creatures from the court of the Terranon swooped over him, and he struck their wings with it. It blazed only with the white mage fire that does not burn but drives away the dark. The creatures returned to the attack. Botched beasts, belonging to ages before bird or dragon or man, long since forgotten by the daylight, but recalled by the ancient, malign, unforgetful power of the stone. They harried Ged, swooping at him. He felt the scythe sweep of their talons about him and sickened in their dead stench. Fiercely he parried and struck, fighting them off with the fiery staff that was made of his anger in a blade of wild grass. And suddenly they all rose up like ravens frightened from carrion and wheeled away, flapping, silent, in the direction that Seret in her gull shape had flown. Their vast wings seemed slow, but they flew fast, each downbeat driving them mightily through the air. No gull could long outmatch that heavy speed. Quick as he had once done at Roke, Ged took the shape of a great hawk. Not the sparrow hawk they called him, but the pilgrim falcon that flies like an arrow, like thought. On barred, sharp, strong wings he flew, pursuing his pursuers. The air darkened, and among the clouds stars shone brightening. Ahead he saw the black, ragged flock all driving down and in upon one point in mid-air. Beyond that black clot the sea lay, pale with the last ashy gleam of day. Swift and straight the hawk Geds shot towards the creatures of the stone, and they scattered as he came amongst them as water drops scatter from a cast pebble. But they had caught their prey. Blood was on the beak of this one, and white feathers stuck to the claws of another, and no gull skimmed beyond them over the pallid sea. Already they were turning on Ged again, coming quick and ungainly with iron beaks stretched out agape. He, wheeling once above them, screamed the hawk scream of defiant rage, and then shot on across the low beaches of Osgil, out over the breakers of the sea. The creatures of the stone circled a while, croaking, and one by one beat back ponderously inland over the moors. The old powers will not cross over the sea, being bound each to an isle, a certain place, cave or stone or welling spring. Back went the black emanations to the tower keep, where maybe the lord of the Terranon, Benteresek, wept at their return, and maybe laughed. But Ged went on, falcon-winged, falcon-mad, like an unfalling arrow, like an unforgotten thought, over the Osgil Sea and eastward into the wind of winter and the night. Ogion the Silent had come home late to Ray Alby from his autumn wanderings. More silent, more solitary than ever he had become as the years went on. The new Lord of Gaunt down in the city below had never got a word out of him, though he had climbed clear up to the Falcon's Nest to seek the help of the mage in a certain piratic venture towards the Andrides. Ogion, who spoke to spiders on their webs and had been seen to greet trees courteously, never said a word to the Lord of the Isle, who went away discontented. There was perhaps some discontent or unease also in Ogion's mind, for he had spent all summer and autumn alone up on the mountain, and only now near sun return was coming back to his hearthside. The morning after his return he rose late, and wanting a cup of rushwash tea, he went out to fetch water from the spring that ran a little way down the hillside from his house. The margins of the spring's small, lively pool were frozen, and the sere moss among the rocks was traced with flowers of frost. It was broad daylight, but the sun would not clear the mighty shoulder of the mountain for an hour yet. All western Gaunt, from sea beaches to the peak, was sunless, silent and clear in the winter morning. As the mage stood by the spring, looking out over the falling lands and the harbour and the grey distances of the sea, wings beat above him. He looked up, raising one arm a little. A great hawk came down with loud beating wings and lighted on his wrist. Like a trained hunting bird it clung there, but it wore no broken leash, no band or bell. The claws dug hard in Ogion's wrist. The barred wings trembled. The round gold eye was dull and wild. "Are you messenger or message?" Ogion said gently to the hawk. "Come on with me." As he spoke, the hawk looked at him. Ogion was silent a minute. "I named you once, I think," he said, and then strode to his house and entered, bearing the bird still on his wrist. He made the hawk stand on the hearth in the fire's heat and offered it water. It would not drink. Then Ogion began to lay a spell, very quietly, weaving the web of magic with his hands more than with words. When the spell was whole and woven, he said softly, "Ged," not looking at the falcon on the hearth. He waited some while, then turned and got up, and went to the young man who stood trembling and dull-eyed before the fire. Ged was richly and outlandishly dressed in fur and silk and silver, but the clothes were torn and stiff with sea salt, and he stood gaunt and stooped, his hair lank about his scarred face. Ogian took the soiled, princely cloak off his shoulders, led him to the alcove room where his prentice once had slept, and made him lie down on the pallet there, and so with a murmured sleep charm left him. He had said no word to him, knowing that Ged had no human speech in him now. As a boy, Ogian, like all boys, had thought it would be a very pleasant game to take by art magic whatever shape one liked, man or beast, tree or cloud, and so to play at 1,000 beings. But as a wizard, he had learned the price of the game, which is the peril of losing one's self, playing away the truth. The longer a man stays in a form not his own, the greater this peril. Every prentice sorcerer learns the tale of the wizard Borgia of Way, who delighted in taking bear's shape, and did so more and more often until the bear grew in him and the man died away, and he became a bear, and killed his own little son in the forests, and was hunted down and slain. And no one knows how many of the dolphins that leap in the waters of the inmost sea were men once, wise men, who forgot their wisdom and their name in the joy of the restless sea. Ged had taken hawk shape in fierce distress and rage, and when he flew from Osgil there had been but one thought in his mind, to outfly both stone and shadow, to escape the cold, treacherous lands, to go home. The falcon's anger and wildness were like his own, and had become his own, and his will to fly had become the falcon's will. Thus he had passed over Enlad, stooping down to drink at a lonely forest pool, but on the wing again at once, driven by fear of the shadow that came behind him. So he had crossed the great sea lane called the Jaws of Enlad, and gone on, east by south, the hills of Oronea faint to his right, and the hills of Andrad fainter to his left, and before him only the sea. Until at last, ahead, there rose up out of the waves one unchanging wave, towering always higher, the white peak of Gaunt. In all the sunlight and the dark of that great flight, he had worn the falcon's wings and looked through the falcon's eyes, and forgetting his own thoughts, he had known at last only what the falcon knows: hunger, the wind, the way he flies. He flew to the right haven. There were few on Roke and only one on Gaunt who could have made him back into a man. He was savage and silent when he woke. Ogian never spoke to him, but gave him meat and water and let him sit hunched by the fire, grim as a great, weary, sulking hawk. When night came, he slept. On the third morning, he came into the fireside where the mage sat gazing at the flames, and said, "Master." "Welcome, lad," said Ogian. "I have come back to you as I left." "A fool," the young man said, his voice harsh and thickened. The mage smiled a little and motioned Ged to sit across the hearth from him and set to brewing them some tea. Snow was falling, the first of the winter here on the lower slopes of Gaunt. Ogian's windows were shuttered fast, but they could hear the wet snow as it fell soft on the roof, and the deep stillness of snow all about the house. A long time they sat there by the fire, And Ged told his old master the tale of the years since he had sailed from Gaunt aboard the ship called Shadow. Ogian asked no questions, and when Ged was done, he kept silent for a long time, calm, pondering. Then he rose and set out bread and cheese and wine on the table, and they ate together. When they had done and had set the room straight, Ogian spoke. "Those are bitter scars you bear, lad," he said. "I have no strength against the thing," Ged answered. Ogian shook his head, but said no more for a time. At length, "Strange," he said. "You had strength enough to outspell a sorcerer in his own domain, there in Osgil. You had strength enough to withstand the lures and fend off the attack of the servants of an old power of earth. And at Pendor, you had strength enough to stand up to a dragon." "It was luck I had in Osgil, not strength," Ged replied, and he shivered again as he thought of the dreamlike, deathly cold of the court of the Terranon. "As for the dragon, I knew his name. The evil thing, the shadow that hunts me, has no name." "All things have a name," said Ogian, so certainly that Ged dared not repeat what the Archmage Genscher had told him, that such evil forces as he had loosed were nameless. The dragon of Pendor, indeed, had offered to tell him the shadow's name, but he put little trust in the truth of that offer, nor did he believe Seret's promise that the stone would tell him what he needed to know. "If the shadow has a name," he said at last, "I do not think it will stop and tell it to me." "No," said Ogian, "nor have you stopped and told it your name. And yet it knew it. On the moors in Osgil, it called you by your name, the name I gave you. It is strange. Strange." He fell to brooding again. At last Ged said, "I came here for counsel, not for refuge, master. I will not bring this shadow upon you, and it will be here soon if I stay. Once you drove it from this very room. No, that was but the foreboding of it, the shadow of a shadow. I could not drive it forth now. Only you could do that. But I am powerless before it. Is there any place?" His voice died away before he had asked the question. "There is no safe place," Ogian said gently. "Do not transform yourself again, Ged. The shadow seeks to destroy your true being. It nearly did so, driving you into Hawk's being. No, where you should go, I do not know. Yet I have an idea of what you should do. It is a hard thing to say to you." Ged's silence demanded truth, and Ogian said at last, "You must turn around." "Turn around?" "If you go ahead, if you keep running, wherever you run, you will meet danger and evil, for it drives you. It chooses the way you go. You must choose. You must seek what seeks you. You must hunt the hunter." Ged said nothing. "At the spring of the river Ar, I named you," the mage said, "a stream that falls from the mountain to the sea. A man would know the end he goes to, but he cannot know it if he does not turn and return to his beginning and hold that beginning in his being. If he would not be a stick whirled and whelmed in the stream, he must be the stream itself, all of it, from its spring to its sinking in the sea. You returned to Gaunt. You returned to me, Ged. Now turn clear round and seek the very source and that which lies before the source. There lies your hope of strength. There, master, Ged said with terror in his voice. Where? Ogian did not answer. If I turn, Ged said after some time had gone by, if, as you say, I hunt the hunter, I think the hunt will not be long. All its desire is to meet me face to face, and twice it has done so, and twice defeated me. Third time is the charm, said Ogian. Ged paced the room up and down, from fireside to door, from door to fireside. And if it defeats me wholly, he said, arguing perhaps with Ogian, perhaps with himself, it will take my knowledge and my power and use them. It threatens only me now, but if it enters into me and possesses me, it will work great evil through me. That is true, if it defeats you. Yet if I run again, it will as surely find me again, and all my strength is spent in the running. Ged paced on a while, and then suddenly turned, and kneeling down before the mage, he said, I have walked with great wizards, and have lived on the Isle of the Wise, but you are my true master, Ogian. He spoke with love, and with a sombre joy. Good, said Ogian. Now you know it. Better now than never. But you will be my master in the end. He got up and built the fire to a good blaze, and hung the kettle over it to boil, and then, pulling on his sheepskin coat, said, I must go look after my goats. Watch the kettle for me, lad. When he came back in, all snow-powdered and stamping snow from his goatskin boots, he carried a long, rough shaft of yew wood. All the end of the short afternoon, and again after their supper, he sat working by lamp-fire on the shaft with knife and rubbing stone and spellcraft. Many times he passed his hands along the wood as if seeking any flaw. Often as he worked, he sang softly. Ged, still weary, listened, and as he grew sleepy, he thought himself a child in the witch's hut in Ten Alders village on a snowy night in the firelit dark, the air heavy with herb scent and smoke, and his mind all adrift on dreams as he listened to the long, soft singing of spells and deeds of heroes who fought against dark powers and won, all lost, on distant islands long ago. There, said Ogian, and handed the finished staff to him. The Archmage gave you yew wood, a good choice, and I kept to it. I meant the shaft for a longbow, but it's better this way. Good night, my son. As Ged, who found no words to thank him, turned away to his alcove room, Ogian watched him and said, too soft for Ged to hear, Oh, my young falcon, fly well. In the cold dawn, when Ogian woke, Ged was gone. Only he had left in wizardly fashion a message of silver-scrawled runes on the hearthstone that faded even as Ogian read them. Master, I go hunting.
Yeah!
Whoa.
Good.
Fuck yeah.
So good.
A++ wood carving montage.
Oh, Lisa, your face when he found the attack.
Yeah, there was so much hope there, and then it.
I know. And it will just get smashed.
Like, how could they kill it? Like, too mean.
I was like, maybe the blade of grass and something can save the attack, maybe? Oh.
Maybe Frankie could have changed that bit for us.
Shall I go back? Shall I go back?
Just
You
fix
have to write the otak into every scene from now on.
Well, I mean, that's really
He's also there, and it was fine.
easy. Yeah, because the otak doesn't speak. So I
just
just
send him to a
theoretically.
farm though.
Yeah, you went to a farm upstate.
Yeah, like go back and he finds him in the snow, and then he sends him to a nice farm,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's all
Yeah.
okay.
Surely his little ghost can sit on his shoulder.
Oh. Where's my otak? There he is.
Aww.
Frankie, can you tell us that every otak is going to be just fine?
Okay. All you little otaks out there listening, every otak is going to be absolutely fine. Okay?
Fucking liar.
Every otak except that otak. R.I.P. that otak.
Does that include the otak of darkness?
Yes.
Attack of the Clones?
I was just motherfucker.
So guys, now that it's happened, I have to share that there was, like, when he's in Rogue this time, listening to it, having read it once before last summer, there's a bit where he reads about a dragon that gets possessed by an evil stone in the north. And that's total foreshadowing for the whole bit that's just happened.
Have you been like frantically trying to kind of sit on that and stop yourself?
I didn't spoiler it. I'm proud of myself.
Very proud of you, Anders.
If it makes anyone feel better, that otak, I did see an original earlier draft where it turned out that otak had a lot of pretty dodgy opinions about 9/11.
Yeah.
They kind of the length already. Yeah. So I mean.
Yeah. They raided his computer after he died, and they found all sorts of nasty shit on there.
We are not
so
cancelling the otak. Stop it.
If that softens the blow.
I'm sorry, no.
Peace with your otak character assassination.
Yeah, I'm not with you.
You defoul the name of the dead.
Besmirch the memory of the otak.
Character assassination.
Oh.
Mute. Block. Mute.
Like your spaced out, hypnotized voice for the wizard that sent Ged north Ostil back 2 chapters ago.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, when was that? I feel like that was a really, really freaking long time ago.
Thursday?
I can't remember what voice I did for him.
He was quite posh. So.
I mean, it's just me, mate.
I thought you sounded like.
Oh yeah, he was a little bit like, oh, hello, yes, you should do this.
Yeah.
It's relatable. I wonder what good voices we've got coming up. Ooh.
That was a good voice.
So much happens in every chapter. Every episode has like people dying and coming and going and being evil and everything.
Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it? Let's see. So we're on.
We get some more boats next, don't we?
It's a whole lot more boats.
Yeah.
Let's see. Was there a? I'm trying to think if there was a. I don't think there was an illustration for this chapter. Did I show you the one of the dragon? Did I show you the picture of the dragon?
I want to see the dragon.
Want to see the dragon?
Wait, let me pin.
How's this for a?
Oh, man, that dude has amazing cheekbones.
And an emo hair.
Yeah.
Oh, again.
More.
Yeah.
Pretty.
Oh, look how sexy he is.
Oh.
Wait, which one?
Both of them.
Yeah, he is sexy.
Fancy Ged so much.
Oh, I was not talking about Ged.
Yeah, no, me neither, definitely. Those cheekbones, man. That scar. Oof.
Shiny scar on the front.
Oh yeah. I don't know if you can see. Look at this
Oh, cool.
beautiful spot foiling scar.
It now has context.
Mm. So shiny.
I love you, Frankie.
This is my boyfriend now. We're very happy together.
It's kind of trouble. Most satisfying person to buy a book for.
My favorite moment was when you were reading the section where Ogion is like carving the new staff, and Kitty just like murmured under their breath, like, oh, "Daddy magic."
I did not say daddy. I said dad.
Dad magic, the most powerful magic of all. My apologies.
Yeah, daddy magic and dad magic, very different.
Very
different schools of magic.
Both very magical in very different ways.
Daddy magic. I like that.
Daddy magic is my terrible pickup artist name.
Yeah, entirely different staff as well.
Hey.
Prompts for the next saucy time.
Please, somebody write a piece about daddy magic for the next please.
Oh, have I not told you about Daddy Malfoy before? I have a friend who always calls Lucius Malfoy Daddy Malfoy. And it's just right there. Everything.
I love that and approve strongly.
The original Daddy Magic.
Magic me, daddy. Oh, probably stop the recording.